Hello everyone. So in the last lecture, what we have basically tried to understand is what is a composite, what are different types of composite, how the properties of composite will change, and then which are the things, which are the parameters on which the properties of the composite is going to change. And once we understand the composite, we can easily understand what is a nanocomposite, and based on that we see several examples of nanocomposite, how we can use different materials to make some multifunctional applications. Okay, in this lecture what we are going to see is we are basically trying to understand how nature uses nanotechnology. Okay, so basically in the nanomaterials we have divided into two parts. The nanomaterials are divided into two parts. One is a intentionally made nanomaterial, and second one is a non-intentionally made nanomaterial. So basically now we are going to understand non-intentionally made nanomaterials by nature. So as I already said, nature is an expert in making nanoscale structure. Okay, so already in nature a lot of things are there where already nanotechnology, the concepts of nanotechnology are working in a particular manner. Okay, however we was not aware that there is something nano in the nature, but with the help of powerful tools and techniques we understand that several important examples are there where we can learn that the nature is also using nanotechnology. Okay, and once we understand how nature is using that nanotechnology, then we can also make intentionally made nanomaterials. Okay, so once we understand how nature is working, how nature is taking advantage of nanotechnology, then we can also try to understand it and implement for better applications for all of us. So let us try to understand how nature is useful to make nanostructures, and therefore the scientists have got inspired by nature, just because once we understand how nature is using nanotechnology, we can also follow it and make some new applications which is not possible with our normal technology. So the first example is fly's eye. Okay, so this is a fly, and every one of you have seen this fly. Okay, so you can see I have gathered a number of images. Okay, but we have to follow the image with the scale bar. So the first image you can see is taken at 10 centimeter, then next to it the image is taken at 1 centimeter, then 100 micrometer, then 10 micrometer, 1 micrometer, 100 nanometer, 10 nanometer and 1 nanometer. So as you can see, as we are going closer and closer look to the fly's eye, okay, at 100 micrometer you can see the fly's eye is made up of hundreds of tiny facets. It is not a single facet, there is a hundreds of tiny facets resembling a honeycomb. So the structure of a single facet looks like a honeycomb, and there are a hundred of tiny facets are present in a eye of fly. If you take the SEM image at 10 micrometer, then you can see the fly's eye is made up of hundreds of smaller eyes. It is not a single eye, so it looks single eye for us, okay, because the distance is so high, like 10 centimeter, 1 centimeter, it looks like a single eye. But once we zoom it with the sophisticated microscopes, then we realize that the fly's eye is made up of hundreds of smaller eyes, and each facet is a small lens with light sensitive cells underneath. Okay, so each facet works as a small eye. Okay, at 1 micrometer you can see in between the facets there is something is present. Okay, so in between the facets are called as a bristles, which gave sensory input from the surface of the eye. So the surface of the eye is get protected with a sensor, okay, and it is called as a bristles. So bristle is present in between the facets of the eye. If we go closer to the bristle, then you can see at 100 nanometer, okay, so almost the length or the diameter of this bristle is in the range of 100 nanometer. Okay, so if we go inside, if we go more closer to this bristle, okay, then definitely at 10 nanometer, okay, at the center of the cell is the tightly coiled molecule DNA. So it is made up of a DNA, and the diameter of the DNA is in the range of 10 nanometer. Okay, it contains the genetic material needed to duplicate the fly. Okay, so this is a basically genetic material. I think you all are aware about this DNA and genetic materials, and basically it is used to duplicate it's a new kind of a fly. Okay, so the diameter of a chain, okay, so the diameter of the chain of a DNA is 2 nanometer. It's roughly in the range of 2 nanometer. Okay, and 1 nanometer you can go, as I said, is in the range of atomic scale, so you can see some atoms. Okay, so what I wanted to tell you that this is an example which is present in the nature. Okay, we are not aware that the fly's eye has a bristles kind of thing, as a kind of a sensor is present on the eye of a fly, which basically protects the surface of the eye. Okay, and now we realize it because we have these powerful microscopes with the help of which we are able to see the nano materials prepared by the nature. Okay, so can we take some advantage if we know the things? Okay, so can we take some advantage of it? So yes, we can see this is a beautiful example where we are making a technology, okay, which is coming basically from nature. So again I have written here, the example is from nature to device application. So we learn the technique from nature, and with the help of that knowledge we are using the actual application for all of us. For example, okay, you can see the three images A, B and C. Okay, here the images which are shown here are represented with the letter A, B, C, and its a description is given below the each photo or image. So let us try to understand one by one. So the image A is basically a polystyrene petri dish. Okay, so it's a basically polystyrene petri dish. You all are aware about the petri dish. Okay, but this is a polystyrene petri dish, half coated with PAH oblique PAA. This is a kind of some chemical organic polymer material. And ARC is called as anti-reflective coating. Okay, anti-reflective coating. What is mean by this anti-reflective coating? So basically you all are aware that the surface of any material reflects some amount of light. Okay, so if the reflection on the surface is higher, its a transparency goes down. If the reflection from the surface is higher, then the transparency of that material is lower. Okay, so what is this anti-reflective coating? So can we make a very thin coating of nanomaterial which will reduce the reflection coming from the surface of the material? If we reduce the reflection, then its a transparency got increased. The transparency get increased. Okay, so in some of the applications we need higher transparency, and if we need higher transparency, then we have to reduce the reflection which is coming from the surface. So for that we have to use a special coating which is called as anti-reflective coating. So basically it is reducing the reflection. That coating is basically reducing the reflection from the surface of the sample. So as you can see, the glare on the right half and the enhanced transparency in the left. On your right hand side, you can see there is some reflection from the surface of the transparency. There is some reflection from the surface of the transparency, and therefore there is some reflection from the surface of the petri dish, and therefore its transparency has got reduced. But on the left hand side, because the coating is done only on the half part of the petri dish, the coating is done on the left half part of the petri dish. So where the coating is present, you can see the reflection has significantly reduced, and because the reflection is significantly reduced, you are able to see what is inside more clearly, because its transparency has got increased. Okay, you can see the image B. There is some coins on the below, and one glass is kept on the top of this coin, and now you can see the glass is patterned. So if you make a pattern coating, again this coating is called as what? Anti-reflective coating. Now the pattern coating showing one is a non-porous normal glass. So in the image you can see there is an arrow. That arrow is represented with the number 1 at the top, and the below arrow represents the number 2 at the bottom. Okay, so the number one, okay, pattern, what you are looking is more shiny, okay, is a more shiny goldish color. That is a non-porous normal glass, so the reflection is very high. You are not able to see what is backside of this shiny square surface. However, the arrow, the region which is represented by the arrow shown by number 2 is anti-reflective zone. Okay, so the glass is same, but where the region where the anti-reflective coating is present, only in that region the transparency is very high, and because of that you are able to see what is the backside of this glass. Okay, so this is an advantage of the anti-reflective coating. In the sea, you can see the anti-reflective coating reduces the glare both from inside and outside in eyeglasses and automobile glasses. So if some one of you is using the specs, then you can take the specs, and I think many of you have observed that on the surface of the specs some coating is there. Okay, so if there is no coating, then the reflection is high. Okay, we are not able to see the what is backside of the specs. Okay, but if we make a special purpose coating which is called as an anti-reflective coating, then the reflection is low and we can clearly see the eye of a person. Okay, similarly you can see in the same image, see in the below side. Okay, you can see on the left hand side image, you can see if you are inside a car, okay, and if you are especially driving in the night, you realize that a lot of light is directly enters in our eyes and we are not able to see, okay, what is on the other side of this light. Okay, so our vision gets down. But if we make an anti-reflective coating on this car, okay, and if somebody makes a light, make a flashlight, okay, which who is coming in front of you, that light is get reduced. Okay, and because there is a special coating which is called as an anti-reflective coating, and then that blur, okay, blur of this intense light get reduced and you can clearly see, even in the low light you can clearly see what is on the other side of the car. Okay, so these images are taken from the journal Energy and Environmental Science. This is the name of the journal. It is published in 2011. The volume number is 4 and page number is 3779. So if anybody of you are interested to know more about anti-reflective coatings, then you can visit this journal and try to get this paper. Okay, there is a one more image I have kept in the below. Okay, and you can see this image I have taken from the Science Alert. Okay, and what is the coat? Okay, basically you can see that is a moth's eye. Okay, you can see the image or the photo, closer photo of a moth's eye, and what they have basically written is, finally read your phone in the sun thanks to the power of moth's eye. Okay, so what does it mean? So many of you has experienced that when you are using your phone in a sunlight, you are not able to see the light which is coming from the mobile, because in this case the reflection from the surface of your mobile glass is very high. So it's a transparency goes down. Okay, so in that case, the information which is coming from the screen is not able to reach up to your eyes because the reflection of sunlight is very high. Okay, so what scientists did is they understand how the moth's eye, what is the structure of moth's eye, how it is working. Okay, you can see in the moth's eye there is a no reflective image is there. Okay, even the image is taken very close to the moth's eye, there is not a single point of light is not available. It means it is completely reduces the reflection. So scientists understand this, and they similarly try to make the anti-reflective coatings on the surface of the mobile. And what they realize that if we make the moth's eye kind of structure on the surface of the mobile, then even in the sunlight we are able to see mobile very clearly. Okay, even in the sunlight we can see what is inside of our mobile very clearly. Okay, otherwise you have to increase the brightness. Once the brightness becomes higher than the reflection, okay, then you are able to get the information. Okay, so this is what a kind of an example how we can learn from the nature and make some actual applications. The second example is lotus effect. Okay, I think many of you are also aware about this lotus effect, but still we have to revise it again because it is again a beautiful example from the nature, and we realize that this lotus effect is also because of nanostructures. So materials with a special affinity for water, okay, affinity for water, those it spreads across, maximizing contact. So there are materials are available, okay, the surface of the material have a higher affinity for water, and because of this higher affinity it spreads more, and because of that its a contact with the surface has got increased. This is called as a hydrophilic surface. Okay, so basically the surface which loves the water is called as hydrophilic surface. Okay, so you can see the hydrophilic surface which is shown in the image on the top left hand side, and you can see the contact angle is there. Okay, so the contact angle is less than 90 degree. Okay, so if the contact angle is less than 90 degree, it means the contact of water with the surface is higher. Okay, and then we have to call that surface is a hydrophilic surface. Now those materials that naturally repel water, causing droplets to form. Okay, so some surface they don't like water, so they repel water, and because they repel water they cause droplets to form, and they are called as a hydrophobic in nature. Okay, hydrophobic in nature. The term hydrophobic is derived from the hydro is from water, and phobos means fear. Okay, somebody don't like, so basically it represents that surface fears to water. Okay, it is shown in the terms of contact angle. On the top right hand side image you can see the contact angle for hydrophobic surface is greater than 90 degree. So if the contact angle is greater than 90 degree, then you can call it as a hydrophobic surface. Okay, so basically there are two types of surface. One is a hydrophilic surface and second is a hydrophobic surface. The shape of surface droplets depend on the interaction between the water and the surface. Now, in the hydrophilic surface, you can see the shape of the water is different. Okay, and in the hydrophobic surface, you can see the shape of the water droplet is different. So that shape is basically depends upon the interaction of water with the surface. The best way to characterize this interaction is by means of contact angle. So how we can try to understand what kind of interaction is there? With the help of we can quantify it with the help of a term which is called as a contact angle. So if you know how much is the contact angle for the surface, then you can differentiate the surface whether it is in the hydrophilic or whether it is a hydrophobic. Okay, you can decide it. So for that you should know what is the contact angle for the surface. So the contact angle is represented by theta, with theta is less than 90 degree indicating hydrophilic surface and theta is greater than 90 degree indicating hydrophobic surfaces. If the drop is drawn off from the surface water on hydrophilic surface, leaves a small residue droplet. Okay, now you can see in the image just below the hydrophilic surface, if you want to remove the water from the hydrophilic surface, then you can see not all the water is removed. Some part of water has got sticked to the hydrophilic surface, whereas if the drop is drawn off from the surface water on hydrophobic surfaces, leaves no residual droplet. Okay, so just see the image which is just below the hydrophobic surface. You can see if you wanted to take out the water from the hydrophobic surface, immediately all the water can get removed from the hydrophobic surface. No water is remaining on the hydrophobic surface. The rationale is that, okay, why it is like that, why in the hydrophilic surface some water is still remained. The reason is given here in the point number 5. The rationale is that what interacts more strongly with itself than with hydrophobic surface and more strongly with the hydrophilic surface than itself. Okay, what does it mean? So basically there is a interaction. Okay, this does not mean that water does not interact with hydrophobic surface at all with the relative interaction given by the contact angle. So basically if you wanted to understand this, okay, you have to understand it like this. Okay, so basically there is an interaction. Okay, there is a two types of interaction. The interaction between the water molecules, the interaction between the water molecules, and the second, what is second interaction? The interaction of water molecule with the surface. Okay, now if the interaction between the water molecules, okay, if the interaction between the water molecules is stronger than the interaction between the water molecule and surface, then all the water will get removed, and that will be the example of hydrophobic surface. In case of hydrophobic surface, what happens? The interaction between the water molecules is stronger than the interaction between the water molecule and surface, hydrophobic surface. Okay, and because of that all the water get removed. What happens in case of hydrophilic surface? The interaction between the water molecule and hydrophilic surface is stronger than the interaction between the individual water molecules. Okay, and because of that, because the interaction of hydrophilic surface with water molecule is stronger, some of the water molecule get remained on the surface of the hydrophilic material. Okay, so this is a kind of an interaction. So based upon interaction, okay, so if there is a hydrophilic surface, then the interaction between the water molecules and the surface, okay, has got changed, and accordingly the water, so in one case, in hydrophilic case, the water still remain on the surface. Even if you want to remove it, still some water get stick to the surface. In hydrophobic case, if you want to remove the water, immediately the water get removed. So this is known to you, this concept, the hydrophilic and hydrophobic and contact angle, and all this is, maybe you are aware about this. So why this lotus effect is there? Because this lotus leaf, okay, is prepared by nature. This is a non-intentionally prepared material. Okay, so it is a prepared by nature. Okay, so if you put a drop on this lotus leaf or this nasturtium leaf, you can take any kind of leaf which is available in the nature, and if you put a droplet of water on the surface of this leaf, you can see the image. There is a exactly spherical droplet is formed. Okay, so the water droplet resting on the nasturtium leaf is shown in the image. Okay, it means its a contact angle is greater than 90 degree, and it represents a hydrophobic surface. Okay, and if we want to understand why this leaf is showing hydrophobic property, then you can see the images below, represented by A, B, C and D. Okay, so basically we are magnifying, we are going closer and closer to the surface of the leaf, and what we observe in the D is there is some kind of a nanostructured material is available on the surface of the leaf, So this kind of a nanostructure basically gives this hydrophobic property to the leaf. So if we understand this, then can we use this technique and use the some different applications like hydrophobic shirts. So already the Cotton King is selling these hydrophobic shirts, which is not going to get wet. Okay, it will remain dry. Okay, so can you use some kind of a technique like this and make the surface hydrophobic wherever as per the requirement of the application. Okay, so this is what we can learn from the nature. We understand that if we can able to grow this kind of a nanostructure on the surface, then the hydrophilic surface can get converted into hydrophobic just by making some kind of a nanostructure coating on the surface of the sample. Third example is a gecko's feet. Okay, third example is a gecko's feet. So basically, in the history of India, okay, you all are aware about the Shivaji Maharaj, and there is one incident where the soldiers, they wanted to climb a vertical wall, okay, and they use some kind of a animal, it's called as a ghorpad, okay, ghorpad, and they supposed to use that animal and they climb the vertical wall. Okay, so it is a really an interesting thing which has happened in our history, but we have never thought that how it is possible for that particular animal to climb with a lot of load. Okay, or even you can see this as a gecko. This is a gecko's feet. Okay, and you can see it can even climb on a smoother surface like a glass. Even if there is a glass, the glass is the um, smoothest um, sample which we easily we have in front of us, and it is very hard to climb on the smooth surface, especially in the vertical direction. Okay, so even in that case, this gecko can easily climb in a vertical direction. So scientists think that what is so special about its a feet. Okay, how it is possible for gecko to climb in a vertical direction, okay, on the surface which is as smooth as glass. Okay, and then with this interest, basically the scientists tried to understand what is so special about gecko's feet. Okay, so you can see the gecko's feet are covered in a tiny hair like structure called as sethas. So you can see the image A, which is basically you can see the full gecko, okay, which is backside of the backside of the very cleaned glass. Okay, so there is a very cleaned glass, and gecko is climbing that glass, and from the opposite side the image is taken, the photo is taken. Okay, in the B you can see this is a gecko's feet. Okay, and there is a region which is represented with a green circle. Okay, and you can see in the image B that it is called as an adhesive lamella. Okay, so in A this is a view of a gecko climbing in vertically on a glass. B is a view of a foot with adhesive lamella visible as over lapping pads. Okay, it looks like a lapping pad. Okay, we also call it as a adhesive lamella for that, and you can clearly see that. Okay, if we in the image C, okay, so image C, D and E, this is a basically we are using a electron microscopes for higher magnification. So you can see in the image C there is an array of sethas. Okay, so in the image C what you can see, the proximal portion of a single lamella with individual sethas. So if you take a single lamella, what you can see is it is that single lamella is made up of arrays of sethas, individual sethas. Okay, and if you take D, then D is basically showing you a single setha. Okay, so image D, what is showing in the image D? So there is an in the image C you can see the arrays of sethas. In the image D you can see a single setha. Okay, and on the top portion of this setha, okay, what you can see, okay, is there is a branched structure. Okay, and that is shown in the image E, that is shown in the image E. So you can see the single setha with branched structure at upper right terminating in hundreds of spatula tips. Okay, so basically there is a gecko's feet is there. Gecko's feet has lamella structure. If you zoom the lamella, you can see the lamella is made up of arrays of sethas. If you take a single setha and if you try to understand what is on the top portion of the setha, then you can see there is a hundreds of spatula tips are available. Okay, so you can see the tips are are available. Okay, and they are not filled. Basically they are like a tube. If you see the image carefully, then you can see that they are open tubes. Each spatula tip is a open tube. It is a open tube. So these structures can get so close to a surface that weak sticky interactions between molecules become significant. So basically these spatula tips, okay, that spatula tip can interact with the surface of the glass. Okay, so you can see how small it is, the spatula tip, and each spatula tip can able to interact with the surface of the glass. Okay, the result is a strong adhesion which is entirely due to van der Waals forces. Okay, and because the spatula tip is open, okay, once it gets stuck to the surface of the glass, the small vacuum is created. Okay, small vacuum is created because of the um, van der Waals force of attraction. Okay, and capillary forces. Okay, and because of that the interaction become strong. Okay, now if you want to understand this in a very simple way, then you might have seen in your childhood that we supposed to use a gun, and that gun, the bullet of the gun is made with the plastic. Okay, I am talking about the small gun used by kids, and it has a bullet. Okay, and that bullet, in front of the bullet there is a rubber. Okay, a red colored rubber. Okay, and it has some curvature on the surface, and what happens if the kid or the child fire it on a glass? What happens, that bullet goes, okay, and because that rubber tip is there, okay, it get stuck to the surface of the glass. Okay, so that kind of interaction, if you remember, if you understand what I am talking to you, then that kind of interaction is basically happening in the gecko's feet, but it is happening at the nanoscale. It is happening at a very small tiny scale, which is a nanoscale. Okay, and because of that a large number of spatula tips, okay, it is able to make a strong hold on the surface of the glass, and which can hold its weight of the body of the gecko. Okay, so the scientists have been inspired by this nanostructure to create internal bandages. Okay, once you understand this, okay, once you understand how this gecko's feet is working, what kind of interaction with the surface is possible, then scientists are interested to make internal bandages which still adhere even in a wet environment. So I think you are also aware that if there is some cut on the hand, we supposed to use a bandage, but once you use the bandage in the water, then it can easily get removed because its adhesion get lost by the water molecules. Okay, that stickiness has get lost due to the watery molecules. So can we use a special kind of bandage so that even you can use in the water media? Okay, so that kind of thing is also possible. Now one more example is, many of you I'm sorry, many of you must have seen the Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol. Okay, this is a name of the film. It is released in 2011, And in that movie, they have make a scene where the Tom Cruise hangs off the Burj Khalifa. So in the middle of the film, I don't remember exactly, but somewhere there is a scene where the Tom Cruise is basically using a gloves, and with the help of that gloves, he is climbing the glass surface of the Burj Khalifa. Burj Khalifa is a tallest building in the in the Middle East, and you can see that he is using that kind of gloves. So, is such type of device is available today? Okay, do you think with the help of these Gecko's feet, with that kind of technology, are we able to do such kind of technique today? Is that technique is already available today? Okay, so the answer is no. Okay, it's not real at the moment. Okay, not yet. It will take some time, because the students like you are becoming the experts on this nanotechnology, and someday somebody from you may able to make such kind of gloves. Basically, we can use this kind of gloves, we can provide to our soldiers, where in a critical condition they can easily climb the any kind of surface and get benefited out of these gloves. Okay, so that was example 3. The next example is example 4, that is a butterfly's wing. Okay, so basically here what we are trying to understand is what is a butterfly wing. Is there is some nanostructure is available, and because of that nanostructure what happens. Okay, so let us correlate this with the color. Okay, so basically we are interested in the color of the butterfly wing. Okay, and we are basically trying to understand what is the difference in the color. So what is color? So that is information carried by an electromagnetic waves relating to its energy. So we all are aware that we have a visible spectra of electromagnetic waves, and in the visible spectra you have different wavelengths, and each wavelength represent its a different color. So basically that light, okay, in the image 1, okay, you can see in the image 1 there is an apple. The sunlight get falls on the apple, and because the apple is red, we are able to see that it is red. Okay, but in case where we are talking about the butterfly wings, this is something different. Okay, this is something different. How? So that we will see, of course, in the detail, but the real question is, do these two objects show their colors just because of pigmentation? So you can see the two objects. One is a butterfly wings, very beautiful blue color with a black shade, and on the right hand side there is a very nice apple, okay, a red colored apple. So the question is, okay, generally the color looks because of pigment. Pigment is a kind of a chemical. Okay, pigment, okay, is a kind of a dye, a chemical which have some kind of a color. Okay, so do these two objects show their color just because of pigmentation? So the question is, like an apple has a pigments on the surface of the apple, there is a pigments are available, and the color of the pigment is red, and because of that we are able to see the apple as a red. So is it the same case for the butterfly wings? So that is the question, and we are trying to understand its answer. So before going to the nanostructures present in the wings of butterfly, let us try to understand the working principle of photonic crystal. What is photonic crystal? I will show you in the next slide, but just try to understand how a photonic crystal is working. So in the image 1 you can see I have shown the glass. Okay, so the yellow colored square you can see is a glass. So the refractive index for the glass is 1.5. The refractive index for air is 1. Okay, so there you can see there is a glass slide is there. Okay, and we are looking the glass slide from the horizontal view. Okay, from the side view. Okay, we are looking at the glass slide from the side view. Okay, so this yellow colored is nothing but the is a thickness of the glass. Okay, so that glass refractive index for the glass is 1.5, refractive index for the air is 1. So what happens? So the light get reflected on the surface of the glass. Light get reflected from the surface of the glass, and the path length is represented by delta phi. The path length is pi. Here the path length is 180 degree. Okay, so here basically the light travels from low to high refractive index medium. Low to high refractive index medium. Low refractive index is for air, high refractive index is for glass. So basically the light is traveling from low refractive index, that is air. It get reflected from the high refractive index glass. Okay, you got it? Okay, so basically this is a upper surface of the glass. This is a upper surface of the glass. Now there is another surface for the glass which is at the bottom. Okay, which is also present at the bottom. So some of the light which has get refracted, okay, or which has get passed from the top surface, it will get reflect from the bottom surface of the glass. Okay, so not all the light 100% get reflected. Some of the light get passed through the upper surface and it get reflected from the lower surface of the glass. It is represented in next image, where you can see the light is traveling from high to low refractive index medium. So high refractive index medium is glass and low refractive index medium is air. Okay, so basically in the next image you can see D is the thickness of the glass. Okay, some so D is the thickness of the glass. Okay, and you can see when the light is incident on the surface of the glass, some of the light get reflected on the upper surface of the glass and some of the light get reflected from the lower surface of the glass, and in that case the path difference due to extra optical path in the medium is represented by delta phi 1, and it is given by the equation delta phi 1 is equal to 2d cos theta 2. Okay, where theta is the angle of reflection. Theta is the angle of reflection. D is the thickness of the glass. D is the thickness of the glass. Okay, so the path difference is 2d cos theta 2. Now if we are thinking about the light, then the light has a wavelength which is represented by lambda, and is there any relation between the wavelength of the light and the thickness of the glass? That what we are going to see in the below two images, where suppose D is the thickness of the glass and that D is equal to lambda by 4. If we choose the thickness of the glass which is equivalent to lambda by 4, okay, then what is happening with the delta phi 1? What is happening with the path difference? The path difference will be, in this case, is lambda by 2 cos theta 2. Okay, when the thickness of the glass is lambda by 4, okay, then the path difference is lambda divided by 2 cos theta 2. Okay. Now in that case what happens is that the both the reflected rays, okay, from low to high refractive index medium and high to low refractive index medium, both these waves, they will constructively interfere, they will constructively interfere, okay, because the path difference is lambda by 2 cos theta 2. Okay, we are getting a constructive interference, so that we will get some color, okay, that is represented with this red colored circle. Now if the thickness of the glass is lambda by 2, okay, sorry, if the thickness of the glass is lambda by 2, okay, then the path difference become lambda cos theta 2. Now in that case the two reflected rays, they destructively interfere, and because they destructively interfere, the output is nothing, no light, no color will be observed. Okay, you got it? Okay, so basically the taking point, the taking message from this slide is the thickness of the glass is important. Thickness of the glass is important. If the thickness of the glass is equal to lambda by 4, you will get some color. If the thickness of the glass is equal to lambda by 2, you will not get the color. Okay, if you understand this, then let us try to understand what is a photonic crystal. Okay, what is a photonic crystal? So you can see photonic crystals are new type of optical materials. Okay, this is a special kind of optical materials in which small dielectric cells with the size of optical wavelength, with the size of optical wavelength from several 100 nanometer to several 10 micrometer are periodically arranged in 2 or 3 dimensions. Okay, now what I wanted to show you is that these photonic crystals is a special kind of material, and that material has two refractive index. Like in our previous case, the one refractive index is air, which is a low refractive index, and another material is a glass, which is a high refractive index. Similarly, photonic crystals are materials which have different refractive index. Okay, different refractive index, but it is also patterned, it is also periodically arranged. Okay, so you can see there are three types of periodic crystals, photonic crystals. First is one dimensional, second is two dimensional, and third is three dimensional. For example, let us try to understand what is one dimensional. Now in one dimensional, the periodicity is in one direction. Means, suppose red colored is a high refractive index material like a glass, and yellow color is a low refractive index material like a air. Okay, now the periodicity is only in the one direction, let us say in the x direction. In the y direction and in the z direction of the cube, there is no periodicity. Only in the x direction, the periodicity of low refractive index and high refractive index is available, and that's why we call this as a one-dimensional photonic crystal. In two-dimensional photonic crystal, the periodicity is in two dimension. Two dimension in the case, in the x direction and in the y direction, there is no periodicity in the z direction. Okay, there is no periodicity is in the z direction, and again here the yellow color represents low refractive index and red color represents high refractive index like a glass. Okay, and in the three-dimensional photonic crystals, the periodicity is in all three dimensions. So you can see in even in X, Y, and Z, there is a periodicity in the low refractive index and high refractive index material. Now, for the simplicity, okay, for the simplicity to understand this, let us remove. As I said, uh, if you consider that red colored blocks are made with glass, okay, and yellow colored blocks are made with air, okay, then what you can see, if you imagine this, okay, that yellow color is replaced by air, then what you can see is shown in the below row image. Okay, so you in the 1D you have stacks of material, but it is separated by air. In 2D you can have a rod like structures, and each rod of glass has separated with a same rod of air. And in three-dimensional structure you can see it is a porous blocks as represented here. So photonic crystals can be classified in one-dimensional, two-dimensional, and three-dimensional. If you understand this photonic crystal, and if you understand that the thickness of the glass will decide the color of the constructive interference light. Thickness of the glass will decide the color of the constructive interfere light. Okay, if you understand these two things, then you can easily understand what is happening with the butterfly wings. Now you can see in this image, okay, on the left top image, what you can see is a very beautiful butterfly. Okay, and let us start to zoom it. Okay, then you can see the wing is macroscopic, and the scale is going to 50 to 100 micrometer. Then you can see some structure, and then if you take a single structure and if you zoom it, then you can see the ridges and cross ribs that they are also present in the micron size. And if you take a single ridge, okay, or single rib, cross rib, then you can see there is a nanostructure is available which is less than 100 nanometer. Okay, and that ridge and ribs is made with a very large number of chitin. Okay, chitin. So chitin is a material with a high refractive index, and you can see the structure of chitin. Okay, the structure of chitin is not continuous; it is pattern, and in between the two chitin, okay, there is a air package. So air is a low refractive index material, and chitin is a high refractive index material. So if the light get incident on the single nanostructure present on the butterfly wing, then there are multiple reflections, which is shown by this blue colored arrow. Okay, and the lowest SEM image is basically shown you how this is the very beautiful SEM image, scanning electron microscopic image of the side view of the surface of the butterfly wing. Side view of the surface of the butterfly wing. So, as I said, the structure of photonic crystal, okay, basically contains low refractive index material and high refractive index material. And if you change the thickness of this chitin, then the color of the butterfly wing will change. So you can see the example here. We are taking two butterflies. One is a blue butterfly and second is a brown butterfly. So the blue butterfly you can is represented with image A. You can see the SEM image is shown in the image A, and you can see the structure of blue butterfly at 50 micrometer, and when you zoom it at 1 micrometer, you can see the structure of the butterfly wing looks like this. Okay, but so the structure is basically is suitable to suitable for blue light. So there is a constructive interference, okay, is happening with the structure, and what the color which get constructively interfered, the wavelength of that color represents the blue color. Wavelength of that light represents the blue color. And in the brown butterfly, what you can see is the SEM image is shown in the B. You can see the image is taken at 20 micrometer, and when you go to 1 micrometer, its a structure is different. Structure of the chitin, thickness of the chitin is different. Okay, structure of the chitin, thickness of the chitin, okay, is different, and the thickness of the air packets and the thickness of the chitin is different, and because of that the constructive interference of light is happening here, which corresponds to the wavelength represents the brown color. Okay, so this is how the nanostructure of the butterfly wing will decide the color for that butterfly wing. Okay, so because the nanostructure of that wing will decide the color of the butterfly. So now we come back to the same question: do these two objects show their color just because of pigmentation? The answer is no. For apple, the concept is different. There is no such kind of nanostructuring is available on the surface of the apple. There is a pigments are available, and because of that pigments we are able to see the color. But in case of butterfly wings, the origin for color of the butterfly wing is nanostructures. Okay, nanostructures. And if you want to go in the details of the nanostructure, then we understood it with the help of the photonic crystal. So photonic crystal, how the low refractive index and high refractive index, they are periodically arranged to themselves, and their thicknesses will decide the color of the butterfly wings. So this butterfly wing has a multifunctional role. It has a multifunctional role. So this nanostructure not only give you a beautiful color to the wings of the butterfly, but it also gives an additional property which is called as a self-cleaning. So the other butterflies like Morpho, Asia have the ability to self-clean. Okay, so this is a special butterfly. Morpho, Asia is a kind of a class which have ability to self-clean due to directional adhesion of the superhydrophobic wing surface. Now I already discussed one example with the lotus lamp, what is superhydrophobic and what is superhydrophilic, and how we can use the nanostructure to make the surface superhydrophobic. Okay, so because already these chitins are present at the nanoscale, the surface of the butterfly wing become hydrophobic, so they need not to take a bath. They don't want to take a bath, even if the water just fall on the butterfly wing, it just roll it out because of its hydrophobic nature. So the droplets roll off the wing in a radial out direction from the central axis of the body. Okay, because it is tilted with some angle with the body. Okay, the butterfly wings are tilted with some angle with the body, so there the droplets will just roll off. Okay, the direction of the rolling is tuned by controlling the airflow by posture of the wing. Okay, that you can understand. The droplets of water carry away dust and dirt from the wings as illustrated in the diagram. You can see the diagram. If there is a dust is available, then this rolled water molecule will take out this dust and clean the surface of this butterfly wings. Dust is generally insoluble in water, but it can carry a static charge. It keeps wings dry. This is an advantage because it is a hydrophobic surface and keeps wing clean. So dust roll off with droplet surface. So this is a one nanostructure is working in different ways. That's why we call this as a multifunctional. It not only function in a one way, it function more than one way. So we call this as a multifunction. It not only gives the beautiful color, but it also gives the hydrophobicity, and it also gives because of hydrophobicity it also gives a self-cleaning effect. Okay, so that's why in that sense we call this butterfly wings as multifunctional role of nanostructure. Now you can see one more example where basically the peacock is there, and you can see it has a very beautiful colors. Of course here again the nanostructure is available. If you take the different layers of the peacock feather, it is shown in the SEM image. You can see the layers has a different structures for photonic crystal. So here you can see three-dimensional photonic crystal is available. Okay, and because of that it has multiple color. So each color has different photonic crystal with different low refractive index and high refractive index thickness. Okay, so each color is representing different thicknesses of low and high refractive index. So these are all are the examples which we learn from the nature, and as I said we are getting the lessons from the nature, and we are trying to understand how nature is using this nanostructure, and then if we understand this, then it is also possible for us to make photonic crystals on some kind of coatings. So you may have glasses where you are able to coat these photonic crystals, and maybe with different light, okay, the different angles, you can see the different colors of that glass. Okay, so that is what you can do in the laboratory scale. So as far as the nanotechnology is concerned, we have to take some important things, okay, in our mind. Okay, so the peoples are concerned that nanotechnology may increase the gap between developed countries and developing countries. So there are some issues related to nano. There are some advantages also. There are some disadvantages also that we have to we are trying to understand here very quickly. I'm not going into details of this slide, but as you are going to be an expert in the nanoscience and nanotechnology, you should be aware that there are some good things and there are some bad things are also possible. Okay, so the nanotechnologies and the digital divide. So as predicted by Moore's law, computers hardware is doubling its capability every 2 years. Okay, this is all aware for all of us. We can see this. Okay, so the nanotechnology plays a big part in this progression. Definitely nanotechnology is helping us for getting technology more and more lightweight, more and more smaller. Okay, the size of the pen drive is going down, but the memory size in the pen drive is increasing. Okay, the digital divide refers to gap between the people with access to digital and information technology and those with very limited or no access at all. This creates an imbalance in the skill and resources. So basically we have to deal with the digital information and with the people which are not dealing with this. So we have to keep the balance between the digitalization and the skill. So people are concerned that this divide may get worse as technology gets more advanced. This divide can be seen as a global issue and also locally within the communities in developed countries. So basically with time, okay, the technology is improving a lot, but at the same time it is important to let the people know how the technology is changing, what is the science behind it, and how the nanotechnology is helping with this growing industry. If we are not filling this gap of the education and technology, okay, then it will be then the thing will happen something like nobody some person is using it, but he is not aware that why I'm getting this powerful technology. He may not understand the beauty of these nanomaterials. Okay, so the important things which are needed to focus is three, in my opinion. That is energy and resources. The climate change and diminishing resources are global concern. We are all aware that we have to take care of our environment, and it has become a global issue now, and we have to take care of our environment, okay, and earth. So the nanotechnology is often cited as a possibly having the solution to come to some of the world's biggest problems. So what are the world's biggest problem? First is the energy. Okay, energy generation. Now energy is divided into two parts. One is the energy generation, and second is the energy consumption. Okay, you have to first generate it, and then you have to consume it. Okay, so if you want to generate the energy, then you have to use the devices like solar cell, which are much smaller yet more efficient, okay, and cheap to manufacture, could make solar power a credible alternative energy source. Okay, so nanotechnology is basically helping to get this goal. Okay, and what about the energy consumption? So the light bulbs, a nano crystal bulb that would use 100% of its energy for light with nothing wasted in heat. Okay, so with these LEDs we have sufficiently achieved a good amount of conversion from electricity to light. Okay, we have reduces the heating problem, and basically this nanotechnology is also contributed in terms of light emitting diodes. And the third important part is the water. So can we use the nanoparticles to remove toxins from water to make it drinkable and save many lives? So water get polluted with many things, and we have to use the nanomaterials. And can we consume water? Can we recover water? Can we clean it back and make it drinkable so that it will be usable for everybody? Okay. So here is one warning, as I said, that any waste needs to be managed correctly to avoid polluting our world. Okay, the waste from nanotechnology need to be managed also, except that some parts are so small that they can be dealt with by conventional method. For example, computers. When the computers come, we think that it is a world of computer and technology now, but now we are facing the problem of electronic waste. Okay, so similarly, the nanotechnology is right now new, but with its development we have to also think about its waste. Okay, once it is not working, the nanotechnology based thing is not working, then how we can recycle it, and how we can consume it without polluting the environment. That is our responsibility. So new ways of disposal need to be devised, so our environment is not threatened and nanotechnology can be developed safely. Okay, so this is just for you to keep in mind if you are working in future for nanotechnology and nanoscience field. Then this is again a challenge for all of us to think that this is our responsibility, that to develop something but without harming to the environment and the society. So nanotechnology is giving scientists the ultimate opportunity to optimally design and create new materials. Okay, so this is giving a scientist a very good opportunity to develop something better. Okay, with these new opportunities come responsibilities. and it is up to all of us to use them safely, yet still allow technology to develop and be useful. So we have to be aware about the thing, that what is our responsibility, what is our goal, and how to deal with all of these things. Okay? So we have a responsibility to, by keeping informed and engaged about the progression of nanotechnology, we can make educated contributions to future decisions making regarding the use of nanotechnology. So this is one of the responsibility from our school, which is basically we are highlighting, okay, this technology as a nanoscience and nanotechnology, and we are expecting that this knowledge should spread across to everyone, and they realize about this new technology, and they understand the good points about this nanoscience and nanotechnology. Okay, so I will stop here, and I declare that we have completed our first chapter, and we will see our next chapter in next some lectures. Thank you.